it's a real pleasure to have Denise Sözen and Sarat Maharaj with us tonight. And the series the series of events more broadly started from the desire to revisit some of the questions and concepts that came out of a conference that founded Innova 25 years ago, that took place at Tate Britain. This conference was called Global Visions towards a New Internationalism. So this is an opportunity to review some of those questions. And tonight's talk and presentation will broadly examine a question that is obviously very broad, but looking at the strategies that diasporic or post-colonial artists use to challenge binary thinking. So the presentation will be Denise will present her practice and some of her works, and this will be followed by a conversation with Sarat Maharaj. And it's a real pleasure to have you both, but also Sarat, to have you back to revisit some of these questions, as you were part of the 1994 conference. So it's a great honor for us. Well, before we get into this exciting and rich conversation that we will have tonight, I'm sure, just a few practical notes. So just for people that might still familiarize themselves with this new tool called Zoom that we seem to be using a lot, during the talk, I encourage you to use the chat function, which is at the bottom of the screen. And at the end, there will be an opportunity to address some of the questions that came up, some of the comments. So please feel free to use the chat function throughout, and we will look at that towards the end of the event. Tonight's event will be recorded. So if you would like to not be featured, please turn off your camera. And at the end, we will also circulate a link to a survey, a very quick survey, hopefully, just to give us some feedback on this event. And also during the presentation, when Denise will be sharing her screen and showing some of the work, please hide the video so you can have a full view of the screen. So I think enough with the practical notes, and I will hand it over to Denise.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Innova for the invitation, and to Sarat, who has been a major influence and inspiration for my research and my thinking, for agreeing to be my respondent this evening. So I'm going to speak about my practice-based doctoral research, The Art of Unbelonging. Being of mixed Turkish and Austrian heritage and growing up between different countries and different languages, I have been aware of the complexities of belonging and not belonging from a very early age. As an internationally practicing artist and an EU citizen in the UK, the question of belonging has continued to haunt me in different ways. Taking my own position as diasporic artist as point of departure, my research has been motivated by my growing frustration with the persistence of Eurocentric and anthropocentric frameworks in contemporary art. Reinscribing the notion of belonging, the art of unbelonging seeks to formulate a critical response to the tendency in the arts to frame artists as representatives of a specific culture, nation, ethnicity, or region. So what strategies could we as artists use to challenge binary thinking and engage more critically with the notion of belonging? My practice is the driving motor for the research and takes the form of 3 discrete yet interrelated artworks that set out to question binary conceptions of self and other through decolonizing strategies that aim to shift the Eurocentric imaginary, which has been shaped by dualisms such as self and other, mind and body, culture and nature, etc. The practice moves across various media and art forms, ranging from video, performance, ceramics, installation, and art as an intervention in public space. The multilingual video performance, Surya Namaz, is a personal exploration of yoga and namaz, the Muslim prayer ritual, exploring the potential of transcultural performance, opacity, and multilingualism to undo fixed notions of belonging. Kahvehane Congress Park, a temporary cafe, ceramic cups and saucers, and a site-specific performance in public space, and transplantations, an installation of Turkish coffee cups and saucers, and coffee beans cast in porcelain in combination with an audiovisual element, are concerned with the colonial history and human entanglements with coffee, taking the exploration of belonging beyond the anthropocentric. All 3 artworks were shown at my Viva exhibition at London Gallery West, named also The Art of Unbelonging. Departing from my mixed Turkish and Austrian heritage and hybrid subject position, the autobiographical and fictional narratives of the artworks explore infinite and unforeseen possibilities for our entanglement with each other, including the earth and what Rosi Braidotti called the non-human earth others, such as plants, objects, and plant-based matter, such as coffee and clay and ceramics. Key strategies include multilingualism, partial translation, and opacity, which brings me to the French Martinican philosopher Edouard Glissant. His rhizomatic conception of relation, arguing for identity to be seen no longer as a single root, but as a root reaching out to meet other roots, has been very important for the theoretical framework of my research. The concept of relation, together with its key attributes, errantry and opacity, which I propose to explore in tandem with Sarat Maharaj's conception of the untranslatable, is fundamental to Glissant's philosophy and poetics. His theory, which emerged out of the specific context and history of the Caribbean, marked by slavery and the plantation, has proved to be an important frame of reference for my research. So I will now briefly introduce the artworks and reflect how they relate to each other and to the question of undoing belonging. As mentioned before, the multilingual video performance Surya Namaz, which I will show in a bit, is a personal exploration of yoga and namaz, which is the Turkish and Farsi word for the Muslim prayer ritual. The main protagonists are my aunt Ümit, who lives in Konya in Turkey, and my New York-born Nigerian Puerto Rican yoga teacher Marisol, Grüezi and hello, in case she's here, who is currently based in Switzerland. Alongside the multilingual voiceover in English, German, Turkish, Arabic, and Sanskrit, filmic and sonic techniques such as superimposition and partial translation are used to articulate the complexities of these transcultural encounters. In addition to the main projection, interviews with the main protagonists are presented on two monitors with headphones in order to further contextualize the work. So bear with me, please. I will now show the video of the main projection. And after that, I will read an extract of a piece of writing that was produced simultaneously with the editing process. It is quite an experimental piece of writing, or what I have called writing from practice. And if you can, I would recommend to use headphones, as the sound is very important for this video. I'm going to show the work in full length, as it is only 10 minutes long. Om. Chanting, we come together and fall apart. Chanting, we come to the present and pass. Chanting, we are neither this nor that, but Om. Neither this nor that. What vibrates in the space between? Call it inter, call it trance. Hybridity, creolization, mestiza consciousness. Turkish or Austrian, East or West, mind or body, local or global, Muslim or Christian, religious or secular, practice or theory, video or performance. Neither this nor that. I refuse to be one or the other. Refuse categorization. Now listen to your voice, chanting Om. The A blurs into U, blurs into seamlessly, vibrating on your lips until you get this tingling sensation. Where does this sound wave take you? To India, or to the universe, to yourself, beyond yourself, self and other, another self? Om. Is this cultural appropriation? Are you a hippie? What is this all about? When your mind becomes an echo chamber and uncomfortable questions bounce back and forth with increasingly loud volume in your head, sit with them and breathe. Embrace the questions that arise. There is no yes. There is no no. After all, truth is a matter of perspective. Breathe. Inhale deeply. Exhale out. Listen to your breath. We are all connected through breath. Living in air, living off air, living with air, constantly exchanging air. Being and becoming is breathing, giving and taking our first breath after birth, giving our last breath before death. Air is breath, is being to air, our invisible other. Where are you from? Are you from here or are you from there? I refuse to respond. What happens if you are from here and there? If you are from here and there and going somewhere else? Somewhere elsewhere? Where and what is elsewhere? Elsewhere is not everywhere. Elsewhere is not anywhere. Elsewhere is not nowhere. Where is this elsewhere? I imagine it is not a place. It is a space. The space in between here and there, this and that, self and other. A hybrid, a bastard I am. White Asian mixed other I am. A ticked box in their ethnic monitoring forms. The inappropriate other I am. Coming from two continents, flooding their little island with my invisible yet audible otherness. Surya Namaz, combines the vertical movement of affiliation, or what Glissant would call root identity, my return to Karapunar, where my father is from, and my engagement with namaz, the Muslim prayer ritual, with the horizontal or diagonal movement of the relation, or root as in R-O-U-T-E identity, in the sense of reaching out to meet other roots by practicing yoga with Marisol. Through putting the culturally distinct practices of yoga, namaz, and Catholic church rituals into relation with each other, the video simultaneously hybridizes these ritualistic practices and interconnects them in rhizomatic ways, challenging dualistic thinking and assumptions of a singular root by promoting a philosophy of multiple belongings. Searching for ways to decolonize and transcend dualistic thinking, initially my project of Undoing Belonging had focused on the exploration of binary conceptions of self and other only in relation to ethnic and cultural difference. So while I initially set out to explore the question of belonging primarily from a language-centered perspective, my artistic research exploring belonging in relation to ceramics and coffee, the materials and media I use in my projects Kavehane Congress Park and Transplantations, instigated or rather demanded a different approach. Working with coffee and ceramics led, in fact, through accidents, to a major shift in my thinking. Through my hands-on engagement with the material, I suddenly became aware of our interconnectedness with matter. And this led to an unexpected and sudden change in the direction of my research, taking the notion of belonging further and beyond the human. Now I would like to briefly share these two projects with you. Kavehane Congress Park was commissioned by the Urban Art Festival Soho in Ottakring in Vienna in 2016. Kavehane means coffee house in Turkish. Let me just make myself invisible again. The project comprises a ceramics installation, a temporary cafe, and a site-specific performance in public space. Organic and fair trade Turkish-style coffee was served free of charge in specially designed Turkish coffee cups and saucers. The 9 different designs, which I applied onto the coffee cups and saucers using ceramic decal techniques, show fragments of old colonial maps and reflect coffee's colonial history and the globalization of coffee. The temporary cafe also provided the open air stage for an interactive lecture performance. Here we can see one of these maps, which I developed and performed with the Bharatanatyam artist Shane Shambu. The performance traces coffee's migratory path from Ethiopia, the Arabian Peninsula, through the Ottoman Empire, to Venice, to Vienna, and across the entire globe. While adopting a humorous take on the globalization of coffee, the performance sheds light on the history of colonialism and questions the conditions of contemporary trade. Out of this project grew another, incarnation of my artistic exploration of coffee, the multi-part installation Transplantations, which combines an installation of unglazed Turkish coffee cups and saucers with a silent video loop of colonial maps that is projected onto the cups, alongside a discrete yet related installation of coffee beans cast in porcelain, accompanied by a multilingual soundtrack. The project is concerned with the colonial history and human entanglements with coffee, taking the exploration of belonging further and ultimately beyond the anthropocentric. Fragmented images of old maps depicting former colonies, empires, and regions which were connected through the coffee trade are projected onto the bisque, meaning unglazed porcelain cups and saucers, which are installed in a grid-like formation on a low plinth. Installed in close proximity to this, the audience will encounter a heap of white porcelain coffee beans, murmuring in different languages. Approaching the heap of white coffee beans cast in porcelain, we hear the voice of coffee, murmuring in multiple languages. Speaking in the first person, in his or her respective mother tongue, evoking memories of the plantation, his or her relation to the soil and climate change, interactions with humans, observations about conditions of labor, trade, transportation, and different culturally specific ways of production and consumption of coffee. The scripts were written in collaboration with people from diverse backgrounds in London and recorded in the first person as fictional narratives of coffee speaking in their respective mother tongues. For instance, Amharic, Italian, Egyptian Arabic, Cypriot Greek, Turkish, Brazilian Portuguese, Colombian Spanish, etc. While a written translation of the scripts into English was available upon request in the exhibition, the soundtrack itself would have been mostly incomprehensible to those whose language is English, whose only language is English, thereby asserting the coffee beans' right to opacity, to quote Edouard Clisson. Now I would like to play a very short extract of the audio track. Okay. So you can choose to close your eyes.
ቡና እንግዲህ መጀመሪያ የተገኘው ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ነው። ኢትዮጵያ ትልቅ ሀገር ነች። ከ100 ሚሊዮን ህዝብ በላይ የሚኖርባት ነች። ከፋ የሚባል ክፍለ ሀገር ውስጥ ነው፣ ሪጅን ማለት ነው። ከከፋም ትንሽ ወረዳ ውስጥ ሸኮ የሚባል ቦታ ነው በብዛት ቡና ያለው። አሁንም ወፍ ዘራሽ ቡና እንለዋለን፣ በቅሎ ይገኛል። ከዛ ጀምሮ ነው እንግዲህ ቡና እየታወቀ የመጣው እና ጥንተ መሰረቱ ከፋ ነው የሚባለው። ስሙም ኮፊ የሚለው የመጣውም ለዛ ነው እና ቡና ከዛን ጊዜ ጀምሮ በተለያዩ አገሮች ከህብረተሰቡ ጋር፣ ከጎረቤት ጋር፣ ከቤተሰብ ጋር፣ ከዘመድ አዝማድ ጋር የሩቅ እንግዳ ሲመጣ ቡና ነው የሚጋበዘው። መጀመሪያ ቡና ጠጣ እንጂ ሰው በመንገድ ሲያልፍ ቡና ጠጣ እንጂ ተብሎ ነው የሚጠጣው እና ቡና ክብር ያለው ነው፣ ሰዎችን የሚያገናኝ ነው። ብዙ የክልል ወይም ደግሞ የአካባቢ ችግሮችም ካሉ የሚወያዩበት ነው። ስለ ጋብቻ ይወያያሉ፣ ስለ ችግር ይወያያሉ፣ ስለ ደስታ ይወያያሉ፣ ስለ ሀዘን ይወያያሉ፣ ስለ ሁሉም የሚወያዩበት መድረክ ነው።
Vengo chiamato coffee, ma in Italia sono caffè. Molti pensano che io sia italiano, ma in realtà sono arabica. Non so esattamente da dove provengo, so solo di essere stato gettato in un grande sacco insieme a molti altri dopo un lungo viaggio. Dopodiché sono stato conservato in un cilindro e riposto accanto ad una rumorosa macchinetta del caffè. Qui al mattino stanno tutti in coda, impazientemente per avermi. C'è molta confusione. Vengo in genere mischiato con latte, zucchero e caramello. Non mi piace molto essere mischiato con del latte o dello zucchero per diventare quello che si chiama latte o cappuccino. In Italia la gente mi ha come espresso, puro e nero. Vengo servito in una piccola tazzina e puoi averne solo un paio di sorsi, ma, credimi, sono molto, molto intenso. La gente non usa prendere la tazzina e andare in giro per strada, ma preferisce avermi al bancone del bar oppure sedersi ad un tavolo e avere un'amichevole conversazione. Vuoi provarmi? Credimi, creo molta, molta dipendenza, ma non so ancora il perché.
So the soundtrack is 20 minutes long, but I've chosen just to share a short extract with you today. Crucially, all three artworks involve an element of language, translation, and multilingualism. The multilingual soundtrack of Surya Namaz is only partially translated. The interactive performance, which forms part of Kavehane Congress Park, is performed in several languages, including exaggerated accents and local dialects, such as Viennese. And the scripts of the coffee stories, which form part of the sound installation Transplantations, which we have just listened to, have been recorded in various languages, as mentioned, Amharic, Italian, Egyptian, Arabic, Cypriot Greek, Turkish, Brazilian Portuguese, and Colombian Spanish, for instance. Translation as one of the art forms which, following Edouard Clisson, inscribes the multiplicity of the world, is key to my practice. Considering its potential to disrupt the colonial construction of the other and the regulation and categorization of difference, which Sarat Maharaj has referred to as multicultural managerialism, the untranslatable, speaking with Sarat, or what Edouard Clisson refers to as opacity, is central to my project of undoing belonging. I hope that the findings of my research, which is of course ongoing post-PhD, will inspire other arts practitioners to develop their own methods to undo belonging, to challenge the status quo and imagine new ways of conceiving belonging that resist the turbo-capitalist marketing and management of difference, and at the same time formulates a critical response to what Donna Haraway has called the Plantationocene. Thank you so much for your attention. I will stop here for now, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with Sarat and hearing your thoughts from the audience. Thank you very much.
Well, many thanks to you, Denise, for this very, very perceptive body of work that you've done. And I should like to say it's difficult to know where to begin to respond in this very short little slot we have in which to sum up some of the ideas that you have responded to. What deeply impressed me is how you have tried to take practice not as an illustrative vehicle through which ready-made ideas would simply be articulated or formulated. And I think this is where something innovative is happening, something new is being produced. The idea that knowledge production, academic research, PhD research is largely done in language, and that the idea that the visual and its attendant forms of articulation, such as the sonic or sound, or the performative, the enacted, the somatic, the bodily, that these elements could actually be forms of knowledge, could actually be vehicles for forms of knowledge, is something that I feel you have bumped into and tussled with throughout this thesis. And I thought that was a very important knowledge to have stumbled over to some extent. And to some extent you are very consciously and openly intellectually aware that that is one of the limits of thinking around the notion of language and créolité, though Edouard Glissant's work is of such depth and sophistication, and it's at every turn aware of the shades of meaning and the shades of resonance that you have in language, that language is not just communication. Language has other registers at play. When we think we're communicating A, in fact, we have conveyed all kinds of other notions, information, data to the listener. And in understanding that there is a limit to what language can do, of course, you pose a huge question even to the universities. How could we have a PhD which is articulating knowledge through non-linguistic elements, through non-linguistic terms? It's always been difficult to feel that the visual or the sonic in itself could have this sort of status, side by side, analytical and high conceptual language. So the first achievement I feel in Surya Namaz is around sound and sounding, how that becomes the vehicle through which one is able to gain insight, understanding, and intuitive grasp of what's going on. So if I take the sort of three meanings that it seemed to me thrown up by the notion of sound in your work, in your interest in sound, sound as in voices, sound as in the acousmatic world, this is sound produced in the environment, and of course, to use a James Joyce word, the acoustemic sound, use of sound, that is a kind of epistemology, that sound becomes a kind of instrument through which we know the world. It's a knowledge producing instrument. So all these somehow have been thrown up in your explorations in sound, in your sifting through different languages, the spaces between words, the kinds of timbre that is impossible to put into language. All of these elements are, I think, fantastically present in your work and your explorations in languages. So if we just take the three elements, one, when we say we're sounding something, we mean, of course, we are beginning a kind of analytic procedure with regard to something. We're trying to understand it through sound. But firstly, I think in our time, the dominant meaning is that we are giving voice to something, something that has been silenced, something that might have been voiceless, something that might have been muted or reduced to a marginal position in the world. That voicelessness has been, as it were, activated into either a powerful, pregnant silence which questions us, or it's been articulated and evoked as a kind of sound which we have to respond to, even when we don't understand or comprehend what that sound or voice might be. So it's giving voice. The second, and that is a social and political kind of connotation to the term sounding and the exploration of sound. The second element, it seemed to me, is when we say we're sounding something, it's like a doctor putting their ear to someone's body and listening to what's going on in it. And through listening to it, we say they are plumbing the depths of that body's language. They are trying to fathom what is going on in that body in order to see if it is healthy or it needs some sort of attention. And that is taking the measure or sizing up something. And it has to do with calculation. It has to do with collecting of information about something. And then there is the third one, the third notion of sounding that I find probably the most promising and most exciting bit coming out of your work, is that through superimposing all these languages, through putting them against each other, in the way they are rubbing up against each other, in the way they dissolve each other and blend into each other, fuse into each other, refuse to be part of each other, these very different relationships that begin to emerge between the sounds of these different languages. Here we begin to find that those notions of language, which are so difficult to get beyond, the notion of the binary, that all language, all verbal language is essentially a binary form. And in this dissolution, in this kind of dew, I don't want to use the word porridge because it sounds a little bit pejorative, but in this kind of dew that you create, this new dew, I know that in various discussions of this with different thinkers, I have been tempted to think of it as the reduction of language and its meaning to data, and that this is a data pulp that you give us through the mix of sounds and languages, and that is waiting to be reorganized into some language. I wouldn't want to go down that road. I think I want just simply to understand that in pulping language in this way, through these superimpositions, through these rub-ups and juxtapositions, you are not creating new raw material for another language, yet another language. Maybe that is possible. I'm not shutting down that door altogether. But what I think I begin to see is that you're demanding a new kind of attention from the participant or the listener or the viewer. And that attention has to do with getting drowned in this data pulp, getting completely immersed in it. This would be the meaningful use of the word immersive, which has been rather overused in our time, just simply to mean the non-conceptual. But if we mean by immersion genuinely, drowning in sound, drowning and being dunked, the word dunking comes from the 17th century when women were dunked in the river, put into the witch's chair and dunked in the river as a kind of baptism to test whether they were inhabited by the devil, by Shaitan, or they were in fact uncorrupted. And that this dunking, however, has remained as a ritual of being completely engulfed in a world of sound, of being absorbed into it. And that absorption does have that element that your cat refused, the element of a baptism to it. That is, a new awakening of the senses and so on. So those were the three kinds of domain of sound and sounding that I feel come out of your research. So if I'm asked, maybe as a PhD researcher, I mean, I've been a PhD researcher, it's now donkey's years ago in the period of the dinosaurs, but as a supervisor, if I were asked, well, what has this research produced that we must consider to be the original contribution of the PhD to knowledge, then I would think it would be something around this understanding of the immersive potential of that sonic data pulp that you have created in your superimpositions. Now, when we turn specifically to what happens in Surya Namaskar, when we listen to you following the fantastic instructions, not only of your aunt's very gentle voice leading and guiding you, and then we listen to the crystal clear mantraic voice of your yoga teacher, your fantastically wonderful yoga teacher, who is so clear, crystal clear in her presence and in her manner of instruction. Both are concerned with the purity of sound, in the sense that both are trying to convey to you that these mantras, these ritual positions, these postures, these prostrations, these positions, these poses need to be taken in very precise ways. That the Surya Namaskar has to be performed in a way that you greet the dawn in a way that you are greeting cosmic energy and beginning a discourse with that cosmic energy. In the same way that the namaz is asking for refuge in the sanctuary of the divine, asking in the takbir, in the opening lines, and then in the taslim, in the closing section of the Al-Fatiha, of the surah, then we find that there is the same element of procedure of going through step by step to a particular kind of state of consciousness. Maybe for the Surya Namaskar, if we took it separately, the aim is, as it's often expressed in as the definition of all yoga, yoga chitta vritti nirodhi, meaning that the function of yoga is really to still that flux and agitation of mind. Mind is the big problem for the dharmic religions of the East. The mind which we so revere and the intellect that we think is the supreme expression of our humanness is in fact surprisingly in all the Eastern philosophical traditions seen as a terrible limit and an obstacle to ultimate liberation. So this must pose some question to the notion of belonging and unbelonging. We belong through language, through intellect, through mental constructions, through cognitive structures, but the processes of yoga are to strip bare these elements through which we have built up the ego, the self, the identity, the definition of our presence. How to strip bare of that. And I think sometimes in my more crazy moments that when Marcel Duchamp used the term, the bride stripped bare by her bachelor's even, as a sort of subtitle to The Large Glass, which is a copy of which by Richard Hamilton is in the Tate Gallery. We see something like this, a stripping bare of identity representation, there in terms of gender, in terms of notions of masculinity, the bachelors, and in terms of the feminine through the Virgin seeking her own definition in her own terms as female presence, or as a capacity to transcend and transition from male to female along a spectrum without wanting to be fixed at any point in it. Now, the point of this is that in both these traditions, we can see similarities in the namaz and in the namaskar, the Surya Namaskar, the search for stillness, the search for putting something into a state of non-agitation, non-perturbation. These states of equilibrium, these steady states of the mind, which are being sought both by the prayer system and by the yoga system, however, do have vast differences in them. And I was glad that you didn't try to say this is the same thing, because that is important for us to acknowledge in the search for unbelonging, that things do not fit, things do not always have a neat sync with each other. They do not have a neat and tidy niche into which we can plug them. The search for samadhi, sadhana, is one thing. The search in the namaz for being in the presence of God, to feel you're in that intense moment where God is looking at you. This is centered very much in a notion of divine presence. I would say that the whole yoga system doesn't have this notion of God. Though we use the word God, we mean Godhead. We mean energies of the divine sort that are cosmic energies. You notice that in bending down, one of the poses in the namaz is not very different from the Bala Asana pose in yoga, but still there are differences which are very important to mark, which help to create this sense of not belonging, of everything being in a state of one step out of sync. And why that is important, I would hazard, is that it comes closer to our contemporary experience of where we are. You describe it in terms of your heritage, your background, your actual bodily presence of being partly Turkish, partly something else, and it could be described as hybrid, it could be described as in between. All these are terms, however, of language, which once again are static terms, they fix us. Now, is this something that's peculiar to you, or is it something that you are in a tradition of asking? I wanted to know to myself, because it seemed very familiar to me, this bringing together the Surya Namaskar and the namaz. It happens very frequently that people are doing this in India as something that they've invented for themselves. So it's not something exotic or something very curiously you doing it and that we feel, oh, what a blasphemous thing you're doing and going out on a limb. That's not it. I feel this is lived Islam, lived dharmic religions in the Indian subcontinent, whether we're in Pakistan, Bangladesh, or India, Nepal, we will come across Sri Lanka, we will come across these kinds of rabats, as I call them, and attempts to synthesize in order to find where we are. But historically, if we look at the concluding section of that famous work, The Dark Princess by W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, Du Bois was a famous figure in the history of Black consciousness, in the history of the search for a non-Eurocentric kind of world in which we might shape our thinking. And if we look at the concluding sections, which have always upset people because they have brought the Surya Namaskar and the Namaz together, because it is a dedication both to Allah and to the great gods of the dharmic traditions of the East, to Christ, to the Jewish tradition from which Du Bois himself drew strongly in his experimentalism, in the way that if we think of another work of art, Shirin Neshat's Turbulence, we will find in Turbulence both the poetry of Jalaluddin, whom you refer to in your thesis, rubbed up against the avant-garde sonic sound constructions as they are voiced by Sushant Rahim, the singer, the avant-garde singer. So we find that there is, however, a tradition in which we can place this sort of experiment that you have carried out. The last example I'll give you is Joyce himself. In James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, the all-merciful Allah is throughout the work rubbed up against the Buddhist and Hindu and Jain tradition. So we do find that it has exercised the great thinkers and artists down the ages, right to people like Sushant Rahim and Neshat. I mentioned them because they were there and at the time when I was writing that essay, The Untranslatability of the Other, which launched the Iniver project, the conference that launched the Iniver project. So I just wanted to make that connection, that that set of problems around sound and sounding were present even then, but perhaps not as teased out, because there were far more conceptual problems or problems that had to be phrased conceptually, that had to be thrashed out in that particular historical moment 25, 30 years ago. What did we mean by the other? What do we mean by the hybrid? Now, the hybrid seemed problematic to me in particular, coming from the struggles against the apartheid system and seeing how the racial classification of the Black world there functioned. There were classifications which said there was white English, white Afrikaner, Dutch, then there were Blacks, there were the African Blacks, then the Indian Blacks, and then people who were of mixed descent who were called colored, but spelt with a U in it, the English spelling. That was a big debate in the Harlem Renaissance, that spelling of the word and what it signified. And then, of course, there was a category vaguely of the other, and they were largely treated as those who were hybrids, and you use the word bastards. There were whole tribes that were classified in that way and then dispersed amongst the other Blacks. The African Blacks themselves were further divided into the ethnic groups, the Zulu, the isiZulu, the Xhosa, the Venda, the Soto, and so on, that these divisions were there. So that was part of this management of diversity, the management to organize it, to regulate it, to give it a political identity through which it could be, as it were, policed However, the idea of the in-between, the hybrid, which largely someone like Homi Bhabha 25 years ago wanted to use, much more than Stuart Hall or myself. Both of us hesitated. We had probably come, I've often thought, from far more subaltern historical backgrounds. Stuart from the Caribbean, I coming from South Africa, but Homi coming from a much more liberated, independent India, very confident, could use the word hybrid without batting an eyelid, whereas we, coming from a far more colonial or sub-colonial world, felt uncomfortable with that particular word. So that there is that shade of meaning that I think I would like to remind ourselves today, when the word is used very loosely to mean diversity. And diversity itself is used in a way that is not distinguished from what we used to mean by critical difference or différence, as Derrida stressed, in order that we should be able to make this distinction between types of diversity. Diversity today is just used for anybody who's supposedly a little bit out of the regular beat, and that can be given its little slot in things. But the in-between two notes, which is how the yogis defined the journey away from the ego, away from two separate notes in music, and the concentration that music happens in between the notes, not on the note, but in between the notes. And that is often also simplified as not the moment of hybridity, but the moment of the glissando. And in sonically it's spoken of as the glissando. But I would think that these are words that once again pin down what is a transition, what in the yoga system is the moment of sandhya. Sandhya is that moment which we find very hard to pin down. The moment that Du Bois called the dusk of dawn. When dawn is ending, that particular moment before daybreak, that moment can be called the dusk of dawn, with all that contradiction of the twilight zone, which it's supposed to be going beyond. And this is why the last section of Finnegan's Wake, Joyce, titled, opens with the words Sandhya, Sandhya, Sandhya. So you can see again how he's struggling not to be Irish nationalist, not to be English, not to be European, not to be all the neti, 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 as the Buddha put it. Not this, not that, not the other. I am what cannot be described as the metaphysical presence contained in a particular spot. So with those thoughts, we could venture forward, but I'll leave it at that for the moment at least. And just compliment you on your wit and humor. I think it's fantastic that there is a streak of humor throughout your work. I did like the fact that the cat was upset at being baptized. And this kind of little micro element in the whole work. And of course, the humor that Sean Shambhu introduces in some of his movements and through his hopping about and engaging with the audiences in the pop-up cafe in the park is also very funny. And of course, it does remind you the movements can at times feel like a pantomime and can have elements of that sort of exaggeration and wit to them, I think, which is a very important thing to have, this ingredient. Otherwise, we become too overloaded with gravitas and with what I call miserabilism in the subject, and with the feeling that we are speaking of such grave matters that we cannot quite find a way of being in the world, in the contemporary world, without being pinned to an identity and without as feel that we have lost our moorings if we search for unbelonging, that we are just simply rudderless in the sea. I think if we look at what our politicians have said, you can see how far away they are from these meditations you've come to work out in your dissertation. We think quite a few years ago, Sarkozy said that in France, multiculturalism had failed. Angela Merkel, not to be outdone, said it had failed, but failed utterly. Mr. Cameron, trying to be skillful and based on the British experience, very diplomatic, said state multiculturalism has failed. But on an everyday level in Germany, the living with multiplicity is a daily reality, whether we go into areas of Turkish presence or German presence with other elements integrated. It's a translation going on all the time. If we are in France, in England, it's the same sort of experience, that there is a street level of living with multiplicity or learning to live with multiplicity, which is where both the challenge of belonging and unbelonging presents itself to us in a very regular way. And I mentioned this perhaps earlier, that the one place I see this being dealt with humor is amongst our stand-up comedians in Britain. And if we listen to our stand-up comedians, largely again from immigrant backgrounds, Black, Asian, whatever word we want to use to describe them, their humor has shown us what this tightrope is between belonging, the needs of belonging, the importance of belonging, but also the limits of belonging. And labeling through language, which is a tremendous act of the analytical and the discursive. Nevertheless, if we feel the solutions of belonging remain in language, we are trapped in what we refer to as the prison house of language. Now, how to get out of that prison house of language? It is through the performative, through engaging the body, in making it dance as you did in the park, in getting it to move, in getting the somatic, in getting the retinal, in getting all the non-linguistic elements into play. And this is what I said at the opening of these comments, are the important achievements of this whole project of yours, that it takes us into the untranslatable, and of course here I do differ from Glissant's notion of opacity, and for very important reasons. I also differ from the notion of créolité as opposed to pidginization, which is the term I had preferred, as pidgin means that you are a member of society, yes, but without any mother tongue, without any native speakers. Can you imagine a world in which we belong to such a contemporary assemblage, but without a native language, that our tongue has been produced out of this pulping of the sonic that you have experimented with in rubbing up so many languages against each other and rendering so much untranslatable and incomprehensible. That is the raw material into which the immersion and the dunking of the mind begins. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarat. That was very rich and has taken me on a further journey. And I think I said to you before already how inspirational your work has been for me, and especially this essay you mentioned, and the notion of the untranslatable, how to re-index hybridity so it doesn't become another fixed thing.
Yes. I wonder if you can speak a bit about your fear that this could lead to a kind of self-exoticization or self-orientalization. Could you speak about your anxieties around that? Because I think that must be surely one of the big questions thrown up.
It was a big, I think I reflect on it in my thesis as well, because it was a conscious risk to be taken. First and foremost, the visual impact of the image of the veiled Muslim woman, and especially the connotation it has for Western audiences, or so-called Western audiences, not just Western, also audiences in Turkey who might read this in a very specific way, where it's in a way closing the reading of the work. And I was hoping to subvert this cliche, because it is kind of a stereotypical image many people have of a Muslim woman, that she should be veiled, which is not at all the case always. I was trying to subvert this in the soundtrack, where I'm referring to the Bible, which has very explicit instructions how women should dress, and they should veil. Whereas in the Quran, we actually cannot find a passage which would give this clear instruction. So that was something I was trying to question and explore in the soundtrack, with the means of pitting sound, not against image, but the relation between sound and image, language and image. Yeah, I think it is a point where I'm definitely have been struggling with, also in other works. Mm-hmm. And of course, I kind of go back as this insider, outsider, mm-hmm. Back to the place where my father comes from, which has its own problems in terms of auto-orientalization, or the native informant, as Spivak would call this figure, or this tendency. So in a way, I've explored it in terms of the root identity with double O. And I've been trying to go beyond this, or reflect on what it means to relate beyond that. For instance, with exploring yoga and Surya Namaskar, with Marisol, who in this video also functions like a mirror image with her own hybrid identity or mixed background, Puerto Rican, growing up in Spanish Harlem, if I'm correct. Please correct me, Marisol, I can see her, hello. And at the time when I met Marisol, I was in Zurich for 2 years, working there, and I went to her Marisol classes, and so this is where I started to reminisce. I think I've lost the question, but
Yeah.
that's when memories of my Turkish grandmother and her namaz
Yeah.
came up in my mind. And you're quite right. It is, I'm not the first person to discover
Yeah.
relations between namaz and
Yes.
Surya Namaskara. In the British Library, I found a book called Namaz, the Yoga of Islam, written by an Indian author in the 70s.
Yeah.
Which makes a much more direct comparison, which I never wanted to do. And I quite agree with you that it's important to keep the distinct differences, and
Yes.
they come together in a pulp, but
Yeah.
they respect each other in their difference.
Yes,
I
and
hope that's...
marking differences is a joyous thing too. It's not about dividing and separating people. Marking differences is really also to wonder at the imaginative differences. Different cultures have had a different shape to the thinking that they produced. And that is a marvel that we should learn to enjoy, even though it doesn't fit with the kind of thinking we might have been brought up with. And that is where Eurocentric thinking, what we mean by Eurocentric thinking is that it was so dismissive of other forms of thinking, other ways of thinking, not only the thinking of the other, but other ways of thinking, that it felt itself so supremely central. And that is what we mean by the critique of Eurocentric thinking, that it ultimately is a violence towards other forms of thinking, and in treating itself as so central, it begins a process of violating the other, even when this is happening without actual physical violence. There is a violation that is going on. And therefore the critique of what we call Eurocentric thinking, today in a global world, we extend to mean Eurocentric thinking, Afrocentric thinking, Asian-centric thinking, Islamocentric thinking. You see, these are all centers that we should be examining and scrutinizing today, because we are in what Spivak, in her notion of the planetary, was very conscious of. This is in her last conversations. This is something that she has been asked about, that by the Eurocentric, we of course mean the opening of the modern colonial world, but we do not mean simply the Western world or the West, which has played such a big role in shaping the modern world and dominating it and violating it too at the same time, and being creative in it too. So these contradictions, how are they to be explored, is what we have in mind as a question in carrying out the sort of experiment you have carried out. I'd still call it a research experiment, because I don't feel I could look at Surya Namaz as a work of art only. You see, I could see it as bits of it move me aesthetically, but other bits of it move me as a researcher questioning you. On what basis are you saying this? What's your evidence? How do you make this argument that is coming up out of this thing that you've put together? And that is where it would help, I think, also with regard to the question about self-orientalizing, is to do some research on other experiments carried out by other people on what I call this street level consciousness of multiplicity, that they have just simply on their own bat carried out such rub-ups and tried things out. You found something in the British Library, but one of your references already gives you almost a kind of exploratory tool of the Surya Namaz. One of your references is to a political thinker in India, Sashi Maharaj. And Sashi Maharaj says, I think I'm a good Muslim by being a good yogi. Is that the title? I can't get it right. But you see, he inverts these things in a very interesting way. So you feel that people are thinking what and how we can live with difference, how we can live with diversity, to use that cliche phrase used by all governments and all political policies. You know, how do we cope with diversity? It isn't only just having black characters in Inspector Morse or having a black James Bond. I mean, these are important elements in their particular worlds, but they do not answer the deeper question of how do we live with difference, difference that is being constantly produced, that is perpetually bubbling up. The minute we think we've grown used to living with a certain difference, yet another difference emerges, because the life force itself is about creative difference. This was the point of Samkhya Yoga, and in all Samkhya Yoga philosophy, the universe is seen as a creative evolutionary organism that is constantly throwing up difference. It's much the same in the philosophy of Henri Bergson, or Bergson if we anglicize it from this side of the channel. And in Bergson's work, of course, Creative Evolution, his famous work from 1907, which so inspired the avant-garde and great artists like Virginia Woolf and Joyce and Marcel Duchamp, and we can go on. And then, of course, the second round of his inspiration through the work of Deleuze, who you hint at through Glissant's use of the term rhizome, the unitary root or the tap root, in comparison to the rhizomatic rooting and connecting of the world. So there we have notions of evolutionary difference. That's constantly the very fact of life, is heterogenesis, the production of difference, the birth of difference. So we have to live with it on the social, political level, on the cultural level, but also on the level of DNA, on the level of our biological presence. And so it's a very deep philosophical question, and an actual very real empirical question in the world. And I think in carrying out this sort of exercise, which is a research exercise and a work of art, and I thought that you made dramatically clear in the distinction you draw between the installation of the coffee project as compared to the Kaffeehahn in the Congress Park, which is a performative event, which is a happening almost, which is a kind of enactment, but which we see in a different way. We view it as participant viewer. When we go to the gallery to look at the transplantation, and we look at the way you've set up the situation, then it's a very, very different gaze that we have to bring, a very different kind of attention. And I was struck by that, and I would draw a distinction between what I call the colloquial viewing and the connoisseurial viewing. And the connoisseurial viewing comes into play in the gallery space, in that attentive silence of that space, that we attend to those voices, those translations going on. So again, you have given us a spectrum of reactions or ways of looking, in the way that you've given us ways of listening. Coherence on the one hand, and at the other end, utter untranslatability or opacity or incomprehension, and the pulp. and then the same with viewing. On the one hand, colloquial street viewing, and at the other end, the gallery aesthetic connoisseur's view. And by the connoisseur's view, I don't mean just an expert's view, but I mean a view of standing still in front of a work and having the discipline to give it the attention and the intensity of examination and scrutiny that one would give it, as one would in an old-fashioned art historical way too. When we used to visit the National Gallery in that way, we walked down to Trafalgar Square, walked into the gallery, walked straight up to Velázquez painting, stood in front of it for 30 minutes and left the gallery without looking at anything else, and just simply scrutinizing and giving that attentiveness to one thing. That is what I mean by the disciplined, intense, connoisseurial viewing that is allowed in the way those teacups demand a reading, a close reading of what's on them, the map, the coordinates, the geography, the broken geographies that we find all over there. So I think there's so much that you can also build on through this, through these discoveries in the PhD, through these inventions that you have made in your PhD. And it would be, to my mind, very interesting for you at some stage, hopefully, that Iniva asks you to come back to sum these up more formally and maybe do a project that takes things further, because I think they're important questions as we tussle with an age that believes it knows what diversity and difference is all about, but we are living simply in an age of what I call diversity fever. There is an epidemic of diversity, a pandemic of diversity, which is deeply problematic because it is part of this managerialism, and part of the management of people who are, however, different, where we need a more critical concept of difference and divergence.
Thank you so much both for that presentation. I'm wondering if we could perhaps try and take some of the questions from the audience that came up. We have quite a few, so maybe we'll take them in order, if that's okay. So we have a question from somebody called Khadija. This is addressed to Denise. Are these texts, scripts, PhD, published somewhere we can read and refer to?
Yes, indeed, they are have been published by the University of Westminster in my thesis, The Art of Unbelonging. And there are also links to the artworks, which are partly password protected, partly on view on Vimeo or SoundCloud. Yeah, also the British Library has published the PhD. And feel free to contact me as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We also have a question from Roshini Kempadu. I don't know if Roshini would like to ask the question, or maybe I can just read it, and if Roshini would like to add something. So I really like the notion of sounding. I wondered if Sarat could also comment on the question of power in the data pulp. Sound also has hierarchy in relation to volume and tone, and wondered if you might elaborate on this in relation to Denise's work.
Yes, well, thank you, Roshni, for the question. I think I was trying to make those distinctions in sound by saying there were 3 points to bear in mind in understanding the shades of meaning and connotation to the analytical terms sound and sounding. The first of this is voice, sound as voice, giving voice to the voiceless. And there we enter the whole sphere of power relations. First of all, it is deeply problematic also for an artist to feel that they are able to be in a position where they bring a voice to somebody. I think we would all feel a little bit uncomfortable with being cast in the role of the voice bringer. So Gayatri Spivak, as you know, in raising the question of can the subaltern speak, opened up a debate which I largely have conducted with her in Sweden and then later in Dublin, that the subaltern, I felt, whether the subaltern is taken as woman, as she did at her time, or taken as a figure in transition and therefore in a fluid gender condition, that person is already a kind of series of power vibrations, lacking in power and empowered in other ways. And this subaltern, for this subaltern, the question is not so much, can the subaltern speak, but can we listen to the subaltern? Have we the capacity, the equipment to engage with the voice and the sound of the other? This is something that Gayatri then came back with in order to say that, yes, the subaltern is disempowered, is marginal, is subordinate, and in their subordination, we foolishly expect them to be speaking our language from a position of power, for them to be grappling to make connection with us. Whereas, in fact, the job is to learn the language of the subordinate in order to be able to both speak with and listen to the other. So I think there is there the whole relationship of power, that sound, sounding, listening, hearing, speaking, and the production of the sound pulp is an issue very much of entangled with power. But I would not want to leave this question entirely on that level of voice and giving power and taking power. I therefore have the second level where I say taking the measure, sounding meaning taking the measure of something, of sizing it up, of measuring it. And that is something we speak of as fathoming the bottom of getting to know the other. This is the ability to create a rapport, an osmotic connection with the other, which goes beyond speaking and language, and it means a kind of connection with the other, where those power relations which are conveyed, even if unwittingly and inadvertently, through language, because of accent, vocabulary, education, the phraseology we use, all of these can be intimidating, as you know, can be suggestive of power, though we might feel, but I'm saying something loving to and affectionate to somebody. How come there is this other level of power that comes through in it? This sizing up, this measuring is the second terrain of power in this issue of sounding. But in the third domain, which is the one I think that Denise has taken us into in her overlappings, superimpositions, juxtapositions, the rub up of voices, sounds, languages, phraseologies, intonations, voice timbre, and inflection of voice. I think there we do have the hope that we enter an immersive space in which the kind of power we experience on the social, political, cultural level begins to fray and fade away. And that might be, or I would like theoretically, hypothetically, to say there is a reserve possibility that that space might be a space unmarked by the vibration of power. So I don't know, Roshni, that would require much more discussion and probably a seminar of its own to unpack, but those are my responses for the moment.
Thank you for that. We have another, yes, Roshini is saying thank you for that answer. We have a question from Antoinette Carey. So I will just read the question, and if Antoinette wants to add anything, please jump in. I am interested in Sarat's reference to James Joyce and wonder, in the context of discussing and relating to Denise's work, if his use of sound and mixing language in Finnegan's Wake could be related to his being in exile from unbelonging, a country whose language and culture was destroyed by colonization. Also, your comment about the use of sound demanding something different from the audience, which I have also experienced in Finnegan's Wake, where there is no discernible story. So, as a reader, I must be completely present in the moment. Is that a demand for presence, which also relates to breath and yoga practice, something you have considered?
Yes, well, thank you. It's an extremely interesting, very perceptive question or statement about the kinds of things we're talking about. I wouldn't be that reductive as to say that I was so uprooted in a culture destroyed, and therefore unbelonging is something that I identify with because of that. It's a question that Okwi and Wizo and I were asked again and again in different parts of the world. Are you concerned with belonging, unbelonging, identity, who you are, because you don't know who you are, because you're uprooted from the society you should have been rooted in? Well, I think we live in a time where to be too rooted is a kind of ignorance. And that knowledge begins when one is uprooted. In many, many instances, the painful, disastrous business of being uprooted, dug out, shifted about, is the shock of the production of new knowledge, new self-awareness, new connections, new thinking. So I would like you to see, sadly, tragically, uprooting can be a horrible thing, but at the same time, in that pain, knowledge is produced. So keep this dialectical relation of the positive and negative in play in that. What you say about Finnegan's Wake, I think, is absolutely true. We are in a storyless kind of novel. We are in a space-time that Joyce places us in, which cannot be mathematically pinned down or cannot be read in geographical terms. We might say we're in a post-geographic space in Finnegan's Wake. And what is it to be in a post-geographic space? I think that would be something one could explore in the way that what is it to be reading a story which is not a story, which is what Finnegan's Wake is. This is the tremendous, mysterious bafflement. Why does the work engage us, even though it doesn't give us a story as such? People have tried to piece together a story, and you feel you're getting a little bit of a hint of a story somewhere, only to lose it in the next few pages and paragraphs. So there is a coming and going on the narrative level, or the construction or shaping of the narrative. And therefore, this idea of being immersed in the presence of the dissolution of language is a very important dimension of reading in Joyce and Finnegan's Wake in particular. that moment, the presence as you describe it. Sorry, I didn't get the name of the questioner carefully.
It's Antoinette Carey.
Yes, I think the notion then of the dunking in the presence, I mean, it's a phrase that I've used in my writings on Joyce, dunking in the presence, dunking in the moment, dunking in the passage of language, or in the transitional, in between spaces, between words, syllables, sounds, in that duration, in the drowning in that duration, in the ocean of sound. That is the presence that one finds oneself in, that yogic moment of ecstasy, that yogic moment of ecstasy. I don't want to make that the equivalent of what is sought in the namaz, which is in the sanctuary of the divine, in the eyes of the divine. Don't want to make a simplistic comparison between the two, an equivalent. I've already said we must guard against that kind of attempt to fit everything neatly together. However, there are resonances in this. The Joyce, the namaz, or the salah, and of course, the Surya Namaskar that opens the salutation to the heavens. I mean, all over Joyce, you find salutations to the deities, to the gods, the goddesses. And these are not gods and goddesses in the sense that simplistically, again, Eurocentric thinking tended to see these as idols, as statues that people are praying to and worshipping. No, these are energy vehicles. These are energy manifestations that we call goddesses or the divine in these systems of thinking, the dharmic systems of thinking, as opposed to the Abrahamic systems of thinking, where there is a monotheistic God, a personal relationship with that God, in the sanctuary of the divine presence. The eyes of God are upon you. Nothing of the kind elsewhere. Different systems, different cultures, different ways of shaping thinking with regard to the search for liberation. There is a beautiful print done by the artist Richard Hamilton, based on Joyce, based on Ulysses, which is looking at the yoga poses of the main character as he's floating into the cosmos while falling asleep in bed with his wife, Molly. So that scene, which is one of the most famous, most sexually and erotically scandalous scenes in the history of literature, and one of the most beautiful uses of language and most beautiful dissolution and breakdown of the English language, one of the longest single sentence in the English language, which ends with 6 yes, 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 the orgasmic yes. This erotic dissolution of the staidness of English in that Ulysses, that yogic drift into ecstasy and liberation is depicted in this print. I think it's somewhere on a wall I have here in my flat. I must go and look at it again, since the connection with Denise's work didn't strike me earlier on. It's through Antoinette's question that my mind has drifted in making those links.
So yeah, we have thanks from Antoinette. Thank you for your response and insights. And I wonder if we can take one more question from Deborah Crane. I think this might be more towards Denise, but Deborah, if you want to add anything, please do. Do you think something similar in exploration of unbelonging art could be made with sign language as well as with sound? And which direction do you see this type of work going, or hope that it will go in the future?
Thank you, Deborah. I think that's a very fascinating question, and I think definitely sign language would be very interesting to experiment with. And there is not just one sign language. I think each country has its sign language or languages, and their dialects, as I understand, as well in sign language. So that would be an interesting field to experiment. I cannot recall the references, but I think there have been artists experimenting with that, I'm sure. But that would be an interesting experiment for me also to look into. My partner, Shane Shambu, is a trained classical Indian Bharatanatyam dancer. He's now an actor, director, choreographer, etc. But there are also fascinating relations between the hand gestures, mudras, and sign languages we could potentially consider. Again, where the direction this type of work might go to is difficult to foresee. I do hope that we can come up with new innovative ways to experiment, to undo fixed notions of belonging. And by undoing belonging, I don't mean not belonging, but really challenging a fixed, static notion of belonging. And I do think somatic practices will have a great potential to do that, whether that is dance in the widest sense. Could be an interesting field. Perhaps Sarat would like to add, or Marisol, as she's here.
I see the reference to your partner, your wonderful dancer partner, whose training in Bharatanatyam shows often in the very body movements. In Bharatanatyam, there is a very codified system of sign language going on, if one might say. Each mudra, each gesture of the hand means something, connects with some emotion, suggests some sort of phase of day or night, etc. That has an iconography and choreography of its own. In the great temple at Chidambaram, all 108 poses of Shiva, both in the form of his masculine side and his feminine side, both in the transgendered Shiva image, there is this language of the sign, as it were, written up in the sculpture on the side of the temple, which is fantastic to see and read. In more contemporary uses of sign language, I have followed my own brother, who has invented a system of sign language for those who are used to be considered speech handicapped, or language was always a problem here, speech impaired or mute, or whatever the case was, words which we do not wish to use that easily these days. And his system, which is called the PIC system, the pictographic ideogrammatic system of communication, is a system based on sign language through pictures and through idea and concept that is articulated in the form of an image. So it doesn't require of the participants to develop a knowledge of grammar and syntax, which is normally the regulatory, disciplinary element in language, and the primacy of language over all communication in society. So I do think there is a big role to be played by what we call sign language, and that this sign could take many forms. It need not be a signifier in the sense that it is a verbal signifier, of course not, but it could be an image signifier, it could be an object signifier. And so sign language could be an object language, as in many ways in the theory of semiotics that Roland Barthes first theorized, or even in Umberto Eco's writings, there is such a notion. We even go to the American tradition, Canadian-American tradition of thinkers around this, Peirce and Susan Langer. Then we see there is a notion of objects serving as the vehicles for communication. Although, you know, this was parodied in Gulliver's Travels. Gulliver comes to a land where there is no language, and then of course people carry on their backs lots of objects. Can you imagine that? And hold up the objects to each other as they're speaking. So it's very amusing and it's very satirical, because he's making fun of theories and attitudes to language and symbology. But in a less satirical vein, I think the questionnaires, did I get it right? Deborah Crane, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. The question is about sign language, and I would say yes, but keep the word sign as open as possible to mean any token could act as the placeholder for what we normally would give to the word. And it has a very big role to play, especially in a global age where we are all, to use a term that I've been using in the various dictionaries of translation that I've been working on. Denise refers to my dictionary élémentaire, but the dictionnaire intermédiaire, and there is a dictionnaire supérieur, that these various dictionaries look at the difficulty of translation. And in the last dictionary, which is a dictionary, the Advanced Dictionary of Untranslatability, which has been abandoned, an abandoned dictionary, incomplete, incompletable, unfinishable, because today we are in a world where we are saturated by voices of other languages and translation going on. We are in a world of translation, but we remain largely monolingual. So it is the world of the monolingual translator. How is the world to be understood when we are constantly in a process or in an ambience of translation, but we cannot ourselves be totally effective translators? We are monolingual translators. And that, to me, is an interesting dilemma of the global age. We all feel we know enough of what is going on when someone speaks in Spanish, though we haven't a clue what's going on, but somehow we feel we do know what's going on. This is a mystery to me. And wherever we travel, we feel we have a good general understanding of what's going on, though we cannot speak the language or we cannot communicate through the language. So what is this mental state of immersion in translation and remaining monolingual? I know you are very critical of the monolinguality of this island, but I'm finding it rather interesting and finding it an interesting Brexiteer position from which to think more creatively about where we are.
Brexiteer position. Yeah, and it is not as monolingual as we think, this island. Not at all, actually. I more and more discover in the English sense of the English language, yeah. And the different registers. I think it was very interesting that when I read sign language, I immediately thought of the somatic and the translation of signs through bodily movement and hand gestures. But thank you for opening this up. Of course, images and pictograms and many other possibilities.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, both.
Yeah,
we have, well, I guess it might be too late, but if there are any, we have a comment, a question from Stephanie Moran. If you had any thoughts about sound, pidgin, and untranslatability beyond the human, which I think is something that you mentioned, Denise, in the beginning as well.
I think I did mention kind of the transposing this concept of opacity also to the coffee bean, in the sense that it is untranslatable, and to expand the notion of relation beyond the human, so we're interconnected also with what we refer to as nature, if we try to go beyond the binary of human, non-human, nature and culture. That's somewhere where my thesis led me to eventually, but unfortunately the time is very limited to really go into depth. I'm not sure if that's the question. There is a lot more to say.
Of course.
But,
yeah, of course. I think, there's a lot more to say. But
I guess, yeah, not trying to pin things down or always translate it or try to translate it. So it's to respect the difference of something, I think, is key for me, at least, and whether that's another human being or a non-human entity.
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, both. It's been an incredible conversation, and yeah, thinking back towards the somatic, I think there were so many aspects that you raised that I felt on a somatic level. So it really, a lot has been opened up in this conversation, and yeah, thank you both for that, and Sarat for bringing up also that idea of uprooting as knowledge production, which we could explore in a in another series of conversations. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. If you have 2 spare minutes, it will be really helpful to get your feedback on tonight's event. And please join us for the future events. We will also go back to some of these questions in December, when we will have a reading group following on from some of the questions that were raised. So do look out for the reading group in December that will be connected directly to this event. So yeah, thank you everybody for participating with your questions, with your insights, and yes, please continue to follow the Research Network program and how the conversation unfolds.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Iniva, for facilitating and for inviting me, and to Marisol again for being part of this, generously being part of my doctoral research experiment and artwork, and to Sarat for taking the time to engage with my works, and for his inspiration, continuous inspiration, I shall say, after this talk, where I'm very grateful it's also being recorded, because it's been really too much to take in. I would love to revisit some of your comments and ideas, which will continue to brew, to use a coffee metaphor.
Well, thank you, Simina, for Iniva's contribution in setting up this exchange, and thank you to your colleagues from Iniva who are just listed as Iniva. Forgive me, I can't get your names to speak to you more personally, but thanks for organizing this, and to the audience, and above all to Denise, who has come through a PhD, which is no small thing, doing a period of research and then producing so much that is promising and that will open up new areas of inquiry and investigation for us. I wish we were all able to meet for a cuppa now,
No.
but of course we'll all withdraw to our kitchens and do it individually. Thank you, Marisol, thank you.
And thank you to my supervisors as well, who Roshini has been also involved in my PhD research as the chair of my Viva, so I'm very happy to see her tonight as well, virtually. And yeah, thank you all so much, Simina and Tavian. And